Check, check. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to jump into our next talk. It is my distinct honor to welcome Bob Summerwill back for his second ETHDenver. This is really important. I think it's the fact that we have ETC here and other blockchains as well is really emblematic of where I think the crypto space needs to be. You'll notice there's a market division between how, say, in the Bitcoin world, they handled some pretty fundamental differences with the cash split and big blocks and turned into a nasty civil war. And this ecosystem where we're learning from one another and we're taking different approaches, but this is open source stuff and open collaboration. So there's nobody better than Bob to tell us about what's going on right now. So please welcome.
Thank you. And the same for Ken, before you run away. So Ken wrote a brilliant article in 2018 called The Irrational Insanity of Crypto Tribalism, which was inspiring for me, where, pointing out the complete insanity of the fact that you have, hundreds or thousands of perhaps the most altruistic, well-intentioned people trying to build a new and better world, squabbling over small differences. It's like Catholics and Protestants, a little difference and right, we'll burn you at the stake. It is, and in some ways it's maybe even worse in some ways. Anyway, let's try and work on that. So hi, I am Bob Summerwill. Oh my word. Where's the screen gone? Okay, there we go. So yeah, I'm Bob Summerwill. I'm the executive director of the Ethereum Classic Cooperative. We are a public charity supporting the Ethereum Classic ecosystem, helping to steward the protocol together with ETHDenver Labs and volunteers and other community members. And I was previously at the Ethereum Foundation. I worked for Consensus. I helped to set up the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. I've worked within Hyperledger. I'm a community ambassador for Crypto Chicks. I like and want all the good things to happen. So, what's happening with Ethereum Classic? Well, a common misperception that there is around Ethereum Classic is that two Ethereums came into existence at the time of the DAO fork. But the truth is that there were always two Ethereums, there are always two different visions. One of which was Bitcoin with smart contracts. Basically that you have immutable, unstoppable, programmable money with the view of Ether being money primarily. And that security, immutability, and the integrity of the ledger trumps everything else. That scalability at L1 is not a primary goal. The goal is to have a multi-decade long immutable ledger. The second vision was World Computer, really where you're viewing it more as an application platform, Ether not primarily viewed as money, but as viewed as fuel for running the machine. And scalability is definitely an aim. Both of those projects were actually happening within the Ethereum project up until 2016. But the fact is that those goals are mutually irreconcilable. So at the time of the DAO fork, that came to the surface where, and I saw this firsthand, I was working at the foundation at the time, and you would have people who'd been working together for 2 years say, you think we should intervene? What? You think we shouldn't? Just complete, could not believe that somebody would have that difference of opinion. But the fact is, if your goal was Bitcoin with smart contracts, then obviously you don't intervene. If your goal is to build a world computer, well, it's just a bug in the application platform. Of course you fix it. So both of these projects, have their own merits, but they can't exist within a single chain instance. So what is Ethereum Classic? Well, Ethereum Classic is Ethereum technology, but with Bitcoin philosophy. With nearly all of those aims in common, and the difference really being around statefulness and the fact that you have a Turing machine, deterministic Turing machine bounded by gas, which is more commonly stated as smart contracts or Turing complete, which isn't exactly correct, but anyway. So, why should anyone care about Ethereum Classic? If you've got Ethereum, well, why on earth would you care about ETC? Well, the situation that we're in right now is quite unique, which is that the proposition that you have with ETC in 2020 is almost like you could go back in a magic time machine to 2016 and say, can we get all of the good stuff? Can we get all of the good technology, the improved developer tools, the frameworks, the maturity there, all of the L2 technology, state channels, optimistic rollups, L2 privacy, but none of the bad things happened. You're off in a time warp and you're following an alternate universe where the DAO fork never happened. And the DAO hacker never exited with the funds anyway. You didn't have all of the ICO mania or the chain blow, and you didn't have the crypto kitties chain blow. So the situation you have with ETC now, very imminently, what we'll have in this pending pair of hard forks is complete binary compatibility with Ethereum. So if you have an existing smart contract, you can just deploy to ETC trivially. That wasn't the case over the past few years. It was the case that if you chose to build a DApp on ETC, you were doing it for ideological reasons, because it was practically harder and horrible and painful. And that really is not the case anymore. And it will really, really not be the case in a few months. So what you have is you have the alternative of a platform that you can actually, full sync on a commodity laptop. You haven't got the Infura addiction. And you have a hard money native token. So I think ETC is a fantastic platform for DeFi, programmable money, slow cadence kind of applications. If you're looking for throughput, don't look here. So what's been happening in 2019? The seminal thing that we had was the Atlantis hard fork, which happened in September 2019, where we hard forked in Byzantium opcodes. So there hadn't been major updates to the ETC protocol, for quite a while at that point. After the DAO split, you had had the introduction of the monetary policy, you'd had the disabling of the difficulty bomb, and that was about it. So what happened there is, we had a massive catch-up in September, and that was a real hard slog to get to consensus on that, to get that movement. But we did it, and in the process, we learned to collaborate. We learned to, how to bring frenemies together to move forward for the aligned, goals that we had. And then we followed that up with Agatha in January of this year, in 2020. And Agatha brought Constantinople opcodes. So with Constantinople, you're very, very close to the ETH chain at that point. So an example there is the addition of Create 2. So you can have counterfactual instantiation of state channels. So just this week, I signed a statement of work with Connext. So we are going to have Connext state channels on ETC within the next month or so, because we can, because that stuff has been enabled. And I think that's going to be the first of many, many L2 scaling mechanisms, privacy mechanisms, and other technologies, which can now trivially choose to build on ETC as well. And then in June, well, we hope it's June, like block numbers seem very hard to predict for some reason, but it looks like it's going to be June, where we're going to have the Azatlan hard fork. And that is bringing Istanbul opcodes. The main difference that you have is we're not going to do the 1884 gas repricings, which broke the Aragon smart contracts, but everything else is coming. And we screwed up the spec a little bit, so there's actually a Phoenix hard fork as well. So it's going to be Azatlan plus Phoenix, activating at the same block, in a similar way that Constantinople was actually Constantinople and Petersburg, but nobody cares about that in real life. Like, it doesn't make any difference, the fact that the thing was logically split into two hard forks. It doesn't make a difference to normal people. So by June, we will be in this position where you will literally be able to compile exactly the same bytecode and deploy to ETC. Switching between ETC and ETH will be as simple as switching between ETH and Goerli or other testnets. Other things that the Cooperative specifically has done recently. So we joined the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. Myself and Yaz are spending time within the technical spec working group, within the testing working group, working on that specification for what Enterprise Ethereum Alliance looks like, which is very aligned with what the ECIPs look like. The EIPs defining the Ethereum protocol, the ECIPs defining the ETC protocol, and the specification process that you have for the EA. Awful load of overlap between those. They're different flavors of the same kind of thing. And the way that I'd express that is if you think in, say, operating systems terms, back in the day you had Unix, and then there were many different flavors of Unix, and then you had Linux arising. So now all of the different Linux distros and the BSD distros and macOS and iOS and tvOS and watchOS, all of these have got a level of basic compatibility, which is defined by something called the POSIX standard. And to my mind, that's really what you're going to have in Ethereum. To my mind, Ethereum has always been a protocol specification. Specific chain instances of that are specific instances. There's not just 2 Ethereums. There's actually about 40 or 50 public EVM chains, which are compatible to varying degrees. And all of these enterprise use cases. So, at the time we were starting the EA, you had people, attacking me and others for doing that, going, oh, you guys are selling out to the banks. Look, you're corrupting the vision. Well, no. The fact is, if you look at something like Linux or the web, you end up with a specification and standard which meets all of those use cases. You have real value from having that kind of basic interoperability. And that doesn't mean that they're all going to be identical. You're going to have different flavors, but you're going to have a large degree of portability between these different things. And you see this in other techs. Many, many chains right now are using Solidity or using the EVM in some form, that you have got a degree of compatibility between these, that really, we have this emerging kind of the smart contract de facto standard kind of flavor thing going on. So, we got involved with EA, and we joined Hyperledger too, and we've been spending a lot of time on Hyperledger Bezu. So with Hyperledger Bezu, you have an Apache licensed code base which can meet all of these public and private needs, and ETC as well now. And we signed a contract with Messari to get higher quality investor information, better quality data and information on what's happening with ETC. I've been maintaining this conflict of interest statement personally. What you really have with Messari is an equivalent for the legal entities, but also for the network, is really saying, you need and want high quality information on what's going on the token issuance, on the governance. You really want to have real transparency about how things work and where the money is and where the incentives are, because that's your best defense against scams, is transparency. We've got ETC nodes as well now, which is an ETC equivalent of Ether nodes for having visibility into, like the market share of particular clients and versions enabled, and really, the dashboards as well for helping us through the hard fork. So that's been really useful. We've got Block Scout. So we've got Block Scout instances for each of the Ethereum chains, and ETC Core have Expedition as well. So we've got 2 great block explorers now, when not so long ago, we were really struggling there. We've got EtherCluster, thanks to my colleague Yaz there. So Yaz has basically done an open source alternative to Infura. So, you can run a cluster of EVM nodes, be those Ethereum, be those ETC, be those whatever. We, in the cooperative, are running some public endpoints based on those, which are being used by a number of wallets. But unlike in Fura, we don't plan to scale that to any large degree. We're not going to scale that up to infinity. We've got the software available. If other people want to run other clusters, they can. But really, you don't even need clusters. If I just go forward, there was this announcement the other day from DAppNode, and this was awesome. DAppNode just added ETC. I don't know that anyone even asked them to. They just did it. It was awesome. I had a post-it note on my desk to talk to them. I hadn't even had time. They just did it. So DAppNode, for anyone that doesn't know, is it's like the Ethereum computer idea, which Slockit first were looking at doing in 2016, and then EtherNode were looking to do in 2018 and 2019. Didn't quite happen. Just the idea of having a dedicated hardware node at home that runs your node, and you'll connect to your node. Because what you have on ETC is you don't have the massive bloat where it's almost impossible to do a full sync from Genesis. That doesn't happen on ETC, and we really don't want it to happen. The co-op also funded the Vyper team to add EVM versioning, which they were missing. So then that means that then you can use Vyper for ETC as well. Though when we're aligned on protocol, you don't even need that anyway. It will just work anyway. But that was a useful feature, and we want to support the Vyper team. We love the Vyper team. The other thing ongoing here is EVM LLVM, which Isaac had just spoken about. I think that's an incredibly important initiative that Alan Lee here is working on. Is really saying what you have with the Sol-C compiler is something that was just sort of like made up, basically. LLVM is a mature tech stack with 20 years worth of investment in it, which is powering the entirety of Objective-C, Swift, Rust, and the primary C++ compiler, Clang. You have something which has got decades of investment from universities, from Apple, from other major companies. So what's being built with Sol, S-O-L-L, from Second State, is an alternate Solidity compiler built on that technology. So we're going to have an alternative. And then EVM LLVM is an alternate backend which targets EVM for that. And Vyper have expressed their intent to rebuild Vyper on top of this stack as well. And I think what we can have in not very many years is a wealth of different smart contract options where you can write these alternate front ends and take advantage of all that same code gen. And then we can build all kinds of tooling around that. So that's great. The cooperative are also supporting research into potential switching to KEKAK 256. So we're going to support implementation work around the Astor testnet to really build the thing out, right? Experiment through implementation and get to a position where we've got something that we can look at. We can look at the transition pieces. But just to be very clear, because people always get this wrong, this is not, a thing that is necessarily going to happen. It is a proposal. It is entirely feasible that we will spend months and months and months looking at all of this and then go, yeah, no, we're not going to switch. That's entirely feasible. But, we follow the process of science. We have hypotheses. We do experiments. We try and falsify our premises. And, doing research work which never comes to life is not a bad thing. So yeah, ask me anything. Myself and Yaz are here all weekend. Also, ETC Core and ETC Labs people are around. Come and hang out. Shout at us on Twitter. Dissent and vigorous debate are welcome in ETC. That's something that people on the Ethereum side may sometimes look into ETC and go, oh my God, what is going on? Donald is saying, Summerwill, you are banned from sharing my articles. You are a Canadian crypto communist. We have these rigorous debates, and then we get past them. But I think having that tolerance for strong criticism is an incredible strength of ETC. And it's something I think Ethereum sometimes suffers from a lot, is everyone is so nice, and sometimes that's not a good thing. There are elephants in the room, and they are good to point out. So anyway, yeah, I'm open for Q&A. So the question was, do I think the DAO hacker will ever move his coins? I think it's exceedingly unlikely that he will try and exit the value. I think it's possible that they may be moved around, but I think that those accounts are going to be the most blacklisted, tracked things in the world. Any movement is going to be like instantly spotted. Any kind of exchange is going to say no and block it. I'm sure you can DEX things around. I think that there's a possibility that things will get DEXed around. A bit of a crazy idea I had at some point late last year, which may or may not make sense, is as we start to build funding DAOs on ETC, so for example, I think it would be awesome if we had a Moloch DAO on ETC. Our testnet is called Mordor, so having Moloch on Mordor, like, it just has to happen for the memes alone. But I think we should have a Moloch DAO. We should have Aragon DAOs. We should have, we do have a community fund, but we don't really have a lot of mechanism around that. I think we're at the point where DAOs kind of work, and having that kind of community fund for a DAO would make sense. And I had a bit of a crazy idea last year. Do you think if I did a CoinDesk article appealing to the DAO hacker, hey, you seem to have done this for ideological reasons, would you like to give the money back into a community fund on ETC, that it might just happen, possibly? I don't think that's maybe not a wise legal idea, though. No, I am not the DAO hacker. We are all the DAO hacker. So the question was, any thought on just deploying DAI on ETC? I think that should happen. I think all the stable coins should deploy on ETC as well, in the same way as they're starting to deploy on other chains. I think all of those things should happen, and they would be easy to do now. And we're also getting to a point where our interchain technology, that interop technology is working really well now. So there is an intention and plan for an ETH, ETC bridge, bidirectional bridge imminently. One of those for rootstock as well, and also Bitcoin to ETC. I think we're going to see these hops between all the chains, and with that being the case, well, you can either do wrapped native from another, but better yet is just deployment of these stable coins, on multiple chains. There's no reason, say you see Tether. Tether was all on Omni, and now it's on Omni and Ethereum. So yes, absolutely we should. So the question, the statement was ETC has a fixed cap. ETC does not have a fixed cap yet. There is a proposal from me. No, fixed supply. So that's the monetary policy. So there was a change in monetary policy, which happened in 2017. Which was changing the emissions schedule for blocks. So ETC has fixed amount of ETC. Ethereum has got a fixed, fixed inflation that you have, ongoing issuance. There is ETC has got a supply cap of the amount of ETC that there will ever be. That does not exist on Ethereum. Ethereum has had repeated changes of block rewards. So your inflation schedule is going to 0? Correct. Okay. So does that mean that you propose that Bitcoiners propose the idea that block spaces is So the question is, or the statement was saying that the BTC model is that block rewards are going to fade down to nothing over a century, and that a fee market will arise to to account for that. That is also the ETC model, yes. The ETC, that you have limited capacity, and that becomes valuable, and really the model is likely to happen. I think this is completely true. Is you're not going to have a lot of dApps on layer 1. I think most dApps are going to end up on layer 2s or on specific dApp chains. Really, that layer 1 is likely to become, a settlement layer, like registry-ish, a place for anchoring. Terry? So Terry has just said we will be finished with the DAI bridge to ETC in March. Excellent. James? So James's question or statement was saying there's a lot of work on Ethereum to do with stateless clients. Where would I see that fitting in? I think the work on stateless clients is very, very interesting. I think that Alexi's work on TurboGeth, basically not using a Patricia Merkle tree, but alternate data structures which have got better performance. I think that's awesome. I would love to see ETC support on TurboGeth as well. He said he's open to that. It's just someone's got to do the work and fund it. As to where all of that stuff is going to go, I think that's an open question. There's obviously a real need for work on sustainability, and that is a common need for F1 and ETC. Terry? So Terry points out that labs are working on that and funding that with Alexi, so that's awesome. This is one of the things that I really love about the phase that we're in this blockchain journey, is stuff is just happening. You can't keep track of it all. Like, there's no way that you can keep it all in your head. Like, I remember when I was first actively, really involved on the Ethereum side in 2015, essentially everyone in the world was on the subreddit. You knew all of the people, all of the projects. You could keep them all in your head. You'd got like state of the dApps. Here you go. There's about 40 of them or whatever. And you would know them. You can't even keep track of the names of everything, let alone know what they are or the status. So, I guess this is the joy of permissionless innovation and of this whole ecosystem, is that if you get things right, you're just building these layers and stuff. People can build on top of them. You don't have to ask permission. You don't have to talk to them even. They can just go and do stuff. And it's great. Sorry, I didn't hear any of that.
Do you ever worry about the classic part of the name and how that might denote old and like, for instance, for people who are not aware of the newer hard forks bringing Istanbul and things like that? Because, for instance, I've met people who know about the DAO fork and yet have questioned whether there are smart contracts on ETC when, so like the first thing they think of is the classic part and they don't think about what they're saying, right?
So the question was, do I ever worry about, having classic in the name and that it implies like old and useless, or people don't know or assume that things are not happening? No, I don't. I think things like being here and talking, the approach that we're going to have certainly at the co-op is just completely grassroots, show up, talk, do things. We're not out shilling, we're not out sponsoring, we're not out like pushing. The story is really going to be, well, hey, look, we're here, and the idea that ETC is a protest coin with no developers is bullshit, and here we are. So I don't worry about that messaging at all. No. As long as we don't end up like Coke Classic. Well, no, Coke Classic was good, wasn't it? It was New Coke that was the screw-up. No, I think that's it. Anything else? No? Thank you, everyone.